collaboration with the Cyprus Mail. This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
Coming up this week, Cyprus Foreign Minister talks about the island's role in regional conflicts.
Well, our position always remains that our good relations with our neighbors, with the people of our neighbors, not with the regimes of our neighbors, make Cyprus uneasy if they feel any threat coming from the island of Cyprus, and this, you understand, includes the British bases.
The Russell Tribunal on Palestine will hold an extraordinary meeting in Brussels next month.
There are a lot of people that actually are on board in terms of the jury and the legal experts who were former members of the International Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court, and the UN. So in terms of the standing of the people on the tribunal, let's just say that the jury, some members of the jury could have their place in any inquiries led by the UN, being a commission or a fact-finding mission.
And it's wine time in Limassol.
This year we have around 15 new regional wineries participating in our wine festival.
Cyprus has just had a visit from Michael Fallon from the British Ministry of Defence. He spoke to a lot of people while he was here, and one of the things that I believe was agreed was that the Akrotiri British base would be used for humanitarian aid drops to the Yazidis in the mountains of Iraq. It's a great pleasure to be joined on the Cyprus News Digest today by Cyprus Foreign Minister Yanis Kasouridis. Yanis, you've got a really difficult job on at the moment because Cyprus, as we always say, is sitting at the crossroads of Europe and the Middle East. And the Middle East is in absolute turmoil at the moment. Where does this place us, in particular, with the fact that we do have British bases here, which at the moment are being used for humanitarian drops, but might, I guess, if things move forward, end up being used for military flights?
Yes, first of all, I want to say that indeed Cyprus considers itself as being the front line of the European Union and indeed of the Western world's security architecture, facing a volatile world in the Middle East. And since the threats that are coming from our neighborhood are particularly asymmetrical threats, having to do with terrorism, nuclear proliferation, trafficking of human beings and organized crime, Cyprus considers that its reorientation of its policy enhances its responsibility to participate in the fight against all these threats, along with its partners and other friends, because these threats threaten the whole world, but we feel the threat ourselves as being so close. The Secretary of Defense of the United Kingdom came to inspect the humanitarian operations that are taking place for the people that have been displaced and suffered so much in Iraq, Yazidis, but also Christians, and therefore the operations were underway. It was not a question of agreement between Cyprus and the United Kingdom. It was a question of Cyprus expressing its positive disposition towards this fact.
What will happen if things do move on and it's seen as necessary, which seems to be increasingly the picture, particularly after the American journalist's, murder, basically? Things are moving very fast, but it won't only remain in Iraq, will it? Because ISIS is also very much based in Syria. Now, Syria and Cyprus have historic ties. We've sort of kept out of what's been going on in Syria for the last 2 or 3 years. What's the position now?
Well, our position always remains that our good relations with our neighbors, with the people of our neighbors, not with the regimes of our neighbors, make Cyprus uneasy if they feel any threat coming from the island of Cyprus, and this, you understand, includes the British bases. But in the case of the Islamic, so-called Islamic State, things are different, because this is not a state. This is a terrorist organization of the worst kind. Al-Qaeda is protesting that they are too extreme. You can imagine then how much extreme they are. And therefore, our position, should the United Kingdom decide to undertake military operations from the British bases, will be again one of approval and a positive one. The treaties give the right to the United Kingdom to do what they think they should do using the British bases. The only thing they have to do is to consult with us, to inform us according to them, to consult with us according to us, but they still have the right to do what they want.
But when the Libyan operation was going on, I believe it was clearly stated from our side that we would rather they didn't use the bases here for military operations, and they didn't.
They didn't. I think they didn't need to do it from Cyprus. It's a little bit far away. They used other means to do it. During the imminent of last summer likelihood that there was going to be military operations against Syria, because the Syrian regime used chemical weapons, and before the decision of the House of Commons for the United Kingdom to back down, we were informed officially by London that the British bases will not be used as a launching point for aerial bombardments, because they don't need the bases for this purpose. All the Air Force will come from the UK, and they will refuel while on flight. And we were pleased with that, because at that time, you understand that either Cyprus should be the stable country prepared to host the European citizens and others in an eventual evacuation, or it will be in the theater of operations. But this time is different, and this time we are in agreement, so there is no question of arguing whether we use the word consult or we use the word inform, because we are in full agreement, so the case doesn't arise.
And what would arise if there was a need, once again, for Cyprus to host refugees? I mean, there are so many of them now in northern Iraq. Is there any, have we put forward any suggestion that some of them might come here?
No. The answer here is no, and it's categorically no, because you know our economic situation. You know the fact that Cyprus now is shouldering its own citizens with the social supermarkets and all the other efforts that are made for a lot of people who have lost their jobs, and so we cannot afford to take refugees. But what we will do is use the plan, which is called Estia, in order to host in Cyprus for a few days the evacuees of citizens of the European Union or others like the United States, Canada, Russians perhaps.
Before they move on.
Before they move on.
Cyprus Foreign Minister Yannis Kassoulidis talking to me last week. When we met, I also asked him about Cyprus' position on the war in Gaza, and indeed whether the island's hopes for a gas deal with Israel affected the way it viewed the conflict.
Our position has been very clear. We were supporting Egypt in its efforts to to mediate for a ceasefire agreement between the sides and then host negotiations for a solution regarding the blockade of the Gaza Strip and the concerns of Israel about its security. And I have had a telephone communication with the Egyptian Foreign Minister where I have expressed our support, and I left to his discretion the case that Cyprus could be used for the naval blockade of the Gaza Strip if the need arises, in a way that a naval convoy leaving Limassol or Larnaca and going to a port in Gaza could be done under the scrutiny and the security of Israelis or of whomever. But this is at the discretion of the Egyptian Foreign Minister if the need arises. We have also expressed the comment that Turkey has been undermining the efforts of Egypt in doing so by trying to get involved and raising the stakes, rendering such a ceasefire agreement difficult. On the other hand, when the first ceasefire has been achieved, we have congratulated Egypt and we have talked about the fact that this was long due, because on the one hand, the indiscriminate throwing of rockets from Gaza into Israel, on the one hand, and the disproportionate force used by the Israeli armed forces had a result, the loss of lives of innocent civilians and in particular children, which is regrettable, and also the fact that a lot of destruction has taken place. So our position is clear. We are friends with Israel, yes, and we will continue this friendship and this cooperation. But at the same time, we maintain our positions of principle regarding the Palestinian question, because in the same way we talk about occupation, settlements, colonization, annexation, refugee rights, for Cyprus, we have the same positions regarding the Palestinians.
So it is a little strange that in this particular case we, if you like, are more friendly with the occupier than the occupied, bearing in mind the history of Cyprus.
Yeah, but always in diplomacy there is no zero sum. It doesn't mean that because you're a friend with the enemy of somebody, you have to be enemy to this somebody. This is not the way things are taking place, and I'm asking, are not the Palestinians friends with Turkey? This means that we need to cease to be friends with the Palestinians, and if Israel and Turkey in the months or years to come, they mend their differences, does this mean that we will stop our partnership with Israel? We will continue. It is not zero-sum in foreign policy.
No, it's not. But a final word on, you mentioned some ships possibly using Cyprus to break the blockade and take help.
Not break the blockade. Following an agreement that Israel will give its approval about this, and perhaps with ways and means to reassure that what goes on from Larnaca into Gaza is well controlled, and
in other words,
no
that
weapons, no rockets, no material that may be used to make rockets is
and the world is wondering why a very simple request like that is not granted when people are starving.
Because I'm afraid that foreign policy is not simple. Neither are domestic politics, and you know that there are domestic politics in Israel, there are domestic politics within the Palestinians, And therefore things become much more complicated than one may think that they're simple.
I don't think any of us think that they're simple. Very complicated indeed. But Foreign Minister, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Listen online to the Cyprus News Digest on YouTube or at cyprusmail.libsyn.com. The latest program is uploaded every Friday, and if you missed one, you can catch up there.
And now some good news if you're an expat living in Cyprus. Do you want an easier way of making contact with friends and family back home? Well, if you're tired of trying to arrange Skype dates with loved ones only to be frustrated by poor quality and delayed and awkward conversations, then the Cyprus News Digest has the answer. We've teamed up with the Expat Phone Company to offer you a 1-month free trial of the EPphone service. You'll get a real physical telephone for free that simply plugs into the back of your internet connection. Once it's plugged in, it's connected with your own personal UK phone number with a UK area code of your choice. Friends, family and colleagues in the UK can call you on this number without paying international call charges. With EPphone you get professional business-grade call quality without any hidden charges. You can also make phone calls with your EPphone. Just dial any number in any country and your call will be charged at the local rate of that country, saving you the huge international calling rates charged by your current phone provider. You can sign up for this trial at www.epphone.com. That's EPFONE.com. You simply enter the promotion code CND in the relevant box to waive the first month's low service charge. This is the Cyprus News Digest, making your life easier and cheaper with EPphone. Check www.epphone.com.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
Well, there's a lot of argument in social media, in the press, in fact pretty well all over the world, about the situation in Gaza. We've covered several different aspects of this topic over the past weeks, and one of the things that has been much discussed in the global media is whether or not Israel, and possibly too Hamas, should face charges of war crimes. Well, my next guest is one of the organisers of the Russell Foundation's Tribunal on Palestine. He is Frank Barat. Frank, thanks very much for joining me. Before we get into the tribunal itself, which I think is meeting in Brussels towards the end of September, can I just ask you a bit about where this falls in the scope of the Bertrand Russell Peace Foundation? Because that's been going, I think, since the early 60s.
Yes, I mean, the Bertrand Russell Foundation, the Peace Foundation, was founded in 1963, actually, pretty much to sort of carry forward the work of Bertrand Russell for peace, human rights, and justice. And in the first few years, the tribunal in Vietnam started and was sort of created and founded by the foundation. It then moved on and also had a tribunal on Latin America in the mid-70s. And then, I mean, with also the death of Bertrand Russell, it continued existing, but it's mainly working now also as a printing factory, and they got a great journal called The Spokesman, and it's a very small foundation now, a tiny foundation. There's two great people, three actually, working there, including Tony Simpson and Ken Fleet. But the foundation actually just mainly gives the stamp of approval for potential Russell tribunals, but is not actually involved in organizing the tribunals themselves. So we've got their support, but they're not actually involved in organizing the tribunal.
You mentioned a tribunal on Vietnam, and there have been, I think, others. What exactly is the criteria that is used for selecting a country to go before the Russell jury?
I mean, there's not really one criteria. I mean, I think, actually, the criteria will be a country or a people under attack. And obviously the Bertrand Russell Peace Foundation has taken the cases of oppressed people around the world. So it won't organize a Bertrand Russell tribunal on the USA to ask, or on England or on France. But it's mainly looking at, oppressed people, countries that are facing wars of aggression, And then it's down to the people. I don't know how it worked for the Vietnam one. I know Bertrand Russell and Jean-Paul Sartre, the French philosopher, were behind the idea. But as far as the Palestine Tribunal is concerned, people from Paris, from Brussels, decided that they wanted to have this tribunal. Some of them had been involved in the Latin America Tribunal in the mid-70s, and so they just went to the Bertrand Russell Peace Foundation with the idea, and then they started the work. And I mean, there's been countless of popular tribunals around the world now, in Mexico, in Sri Lanka, about ecocide as well. So it's happening. I think people feel that existing tribunal do not fulfill the mission to defend the people, so popular tribunals are a good alternative.
All right, it doesn't have any sort of mandate in the sense that it's very much, in a sense, a citizens' initiative, I suppose. But where, if anywhere, does it fit in with, for example, the International Criminal Court? Are the testimonies brought before the Russell Tribunal passed on?
Yes, I mean, everything is passed on, the testimonies, but also the findings that we send to various people in the International Criminal Court, in the International Court of Justice, but also the UN. For the New York session, we actually had a hearing inside the building of the United Nations. For the Brussels session this time, we are preparing a hearing inside the EU Commission as well, EU Parliament. And I mean, a lot of people that actually are on board in terms of the jury and the legal experts were former members of the International Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court, and the UN. So in terms of the standing of the people on the tribunal, let's just say that the jury, some members of the jury, could have their place in any inquiries led by the UN, being a commission or a fact-finding mission.
A lot of people would say it's very one-sided. You're going to hear testimonies, I take it, from people who have, I presume, hard evidence of activities that have gone on over the past years, but particularly now over the past month or so. Do you also call people to represent the countries that are, some would say, under attack from the tribunal?
First, yeah, we are definitely one-sided. We are on the side of the oppressed. That's clear from the start. Then, in terms of asking the people that we put in the dock, being, for London, for example, corporations, or the United Nations in New York, or this time it's going to be Israel, and actually, Israel and the third countries, like, the US, that has been completely... more than complicit with Israel's massacre in Gaza, because they just fund it and arm it as well. We are inviting those people. Yes, we've throughout all the sessions, throughout the 5 years, we've sent requests for Israel by fax, by email, by phone to send a representation. We send requests to corporations that were in the dock in London to send representations or send letters explaining why they disagree and just to make their case. Actually, a few corporations, in the case of the London session, had replied, but in terms of sort of politicians, I think someone from the EU replied as well. I can't remember who, but otherwise, no. Not one politician dared to come or to send a representative of the Israeli embassy, for example.
Does that reduce the validity of what you're doing? Because again, people will say, well, you're not listening to the other point of view, but if you've invited them, presumably then it's up to them whether they attend.
Exactly, it's up to them whether they attend, but once again, we are on the side of the oppressed, and we're not trying to fool anyone by saying that we are not, and we're not trying to say that there's two sides of the stories, and that we're going to listen to to both sides and try to make up our mind. We actually, starting from the tribunal on Palestine, started from the basic fact that Israel has been condemned repeatedly by the UN, by human rights organizations, by aid organizations, by various countries around the world for its actions in Palestine. So we're starting from the bottom line that Israel is guilty of violating international law. We're mostly looking at who enables and which countries, which bodies, which corporations enable Israel to actually commit those crimes. This time we're focusing on Israeli war crimes, and actually we'll go further than anything that has been done before, because we will talk about the crime of genocide, and it's the first time a tribunal is going to address this question when it comes to Israel. Again, I'm not saying that Israel is guilty of genocide, but we're going to address the question and open the topic. And again, with the people who've gone on board, I think they've proven over the last few decades that, the people are very high moral ground, and the people that have worked in the best sort of bodies, institution in the world, people that are respected by their fellow sort of jurists or lawyers. And we're going to make the case that existing tribunals, by acting like there's an equity between Israel and the Palestinian, or Israel and Hamas, or Israel and Palestinian resistance, are actually guilty of what Bertrand Russell would call the crime of silence. When you remain silent, or when you stay neutral in front of an injustice, you are taking the side of the oppressor.
A lot of people who support what Israel is doing will come back at you. I'm sure they have on many occasions. It's something I've been hearing continuously since the beginning of July, and that is, if they fired rockets at you, well, what would you do?
I think, that's the question that comes back to many people all the time. But the thing is, first, the rockets have started flying, as they call it, at Israel only a few decades ago, actually a decade ago. And Israel has been occupying Palestine since 1967, and the Nakba of 1948 was now more than 65 years ago. The question you ask those people, if a country was occupying you, oppressing you, arresting your people, beating, torturing your kids, demolishing your house on a daily basis for now more than 65 years, what would you do? And actually international law enables, in terms of an oppressed people facing an occupation, enables the use of arms. So the question of rockets is actually a red herring that of course Israeli sort of supporters always use, but the rockets have nothing to do with what's happening now. And Hamas and actually other Palestinian resistance groups has proven that you can stop flying rockets when a ceasefire is respected by Israel, which is hardly ever the case anyway.
So you're going to meet in September, and by the way, I have to mention that we spoke on the programme a few weeks back to Miko Peled, who, as you know, is a very well-known Israeli activist on this issue, and I understand that his sister, whose child was killed by a Palestinian bomb, was one of the founding members of the Tribunal on Palestine.
Yes, the great Nurit Peled, Miko's sister. I mean, they're coming from a great family of resistance to Israeli oppression. But yes, Nurit's daughter, Smada, was killed, I think when she was about 12 years old, by a bomb in a bus from, I don't know if it's from Hamas or from a Palestinian resistance group, yeah. And since then, Nurit is one of the founders of Combatant for Peace and Bereaved Mothers for Peace as well. And she's a very strong advocate for Palestinian freedom and rights. She's an amazing person, and Miko is as well, of course.
So it comes September, you'll be meeting in Brussels. Do you have different jury members each time you meet? This is what, the 5th meeting on Palestine?
Yes, it is, yes. Barcelona, London, Cape Town, New York, Brussels. It'll be the 6th one, actually, the 6th meeting on Palestine. Actually, the tribunal was deemed over in last December 2013. We decided that it was time for us to stop and that we had done enough and addressed enough subjects. But in front, I think a lot of the people in front of what's happening now in Gaza, jury members and legal experts and various people involved in the tribunal have decided to start again and to do one sort of extraordinary special session on Gaza. So in terms of the jury, we tend to have the core of the juries tend to remain the same, because we want really the jury as well to feel like a team, and it's been like that for about 5 or 6 years now. So people like Michael Mansfield, Roger Waters, Ronnie Casrails, John Dugard have been on board for many years now. But we also invite other people every time. So, for example, this time Richard Falk, the former UN envoy to Palestine, will join us. British filmmaker Ken Loach and Paul Laverty will also join us. Indian human rights and activist Vandana Shiva will be on board, and we're expecting at least 2 or 3 other members to join us before September.
Now, this is going to be streamed, I believe, online, so people can actually hear it for themselves. Is there a public gallery? Is it purely testimony from the people you've invited, or is there an opportunity for the general public to get involved?
Now, the general public can't get involved because it's really conducted like an inquest. So there are testimonies from witnesses. And at the end of every testimony, the jury has about 10-15 minutes to ask the witness some questions. So like really a proper inquest. And then, it's a rotation of experts and witnesses coming to the bench. So no, the public can't ask questions during the session.
But they can listen to it online, and I'll ask you if you've got the link for that when we finish speaking. Just very quickly, Frank, I must also ask you, you say this is the 6th meeting. You just said as well that you'd thought it was going to be wrapped up last December. What has it actually achieved?
In terms of the achievements of the tribunal, as we are a tribunal and an inquest, and it's not, let's say, a direct action when you can see you plan the action, you execute the action, and then you look back and think, did we achieve what we wanted to achieve? I think the tribunal is because of the nature of the tribunal, is a very long-term process that will bear fruit, I think, in the few years to come. Already, we've seen great things because of the tribunal. We've really, I think, and international society, civil society, in terms of the campaigns and in terms of the movement, we say that the tribunal has brought incredible legitimacy to their actions by bringing sort of the legal, the political, and the campaigning together. We've also brought some really amazing people that, since they've joined the tribunal, have helped immensely other movements, like, the musician Roger Waters, the filmmaker Ken Loach, that, have been incredible supporters of the Palestinian rights and the boycott movement, etc. And, Richard Fallon, just before he left the UN in his final report, quoted some findings of the tribunal about 3 or 4 times during his final draft of as UN reporter. So, we will see how important the tribunal has been maybe in a couple of years. But so far, in terms of what it brought to civil society and the bridges it built between movement from South Africa, France, and the Netherlands, and Ireland, and the US, and Palestine, of course, I think the tribunal has already done a lot of good.
You mentioned the legal aspect, and that, of course, is very important in terms of international law, particularly since you're dealing as well with the UN to some degree. That legal basis is, in a sense, the be-all and end-all of the way countries are supposedly allowed to behave. I mentioned at the very beginning the International Criminal Court. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that both sides actually may face sanctions or at least a hearing at the ICC?
The thing about the ICC, it's about individuals. So it's a criminal court, so it's punishing individual actors. So he could actually bring Netanyahu to the court, or Ismail Haniyeh, or Khaled Michel to the court. He won't say, the International Criminal Court won't say Hamas is guilty or Israel is guilty. He will say Netanyahu is guilty, this soldier is guilty, or whatever, Haniyeh is guilty. In terms of what it could, which state or which faction could be held responsible for war crimes, Israel definitely is and definitely could be facing war crimes, punishment and actions. In terms, again, of individuals, of who put together the war, let's say. In terms of Hamas, they could probably as well. It's not only Hamas, we have to be clear about that is firing rockets. But firing rockets at civilian populated areas can be considered as a war crime. But now I'm not a legal expert, so I can't really comment too much on that.
Well, we'll listen with interest when the tribunal goes online. Do you have a URL or a website for us where people can listen in, and the dates?
Anything will be posted on Russell Tribunal on Palestine.com and on our Facebook page, which is Russell Tribunal on Palestine. So far, we don't have a link for a live stream, but in the next couple of weeks, a link will be posted either on the website, so russelltribunalpalestine.com, or on our Facebook page, Russell Tribunal in Palestine.
And if my memory serves me correctly, it's the 24th and 25th of September?
That's correct.
Frank Barrett, a pleasure talking to you. Many thanks for joining me.
Thanks a lot, Rosie.
And let's finish on a lighter note. The Limassol Wine Festival is underway, and Skevi Antoniadou, Cultural Officer with the Limassol Municipality, has the details of this year's festival.
So we have something very special and very different this year. The Cyprus Cinephile Club and the Cyprus regional wineries will participate with the wineries written in our program that you will find them. It's something new because until now we had Edco, Kiel, Loyal and Sodap, the 4 big wineries, and a couple of small wineries participating. This year we have around 15 new regional wineries participating in our wine festival.
So there'll be a much bigger variety and a chance for people to actually taste some of the wines that are now making a name for themselves, many of them abroad, aren't they?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. But I can read them to you, but there are many, so someone can find them written in our program. In our site of Limassol Municipality, we have the program printed out and given to all the CTO offices and to the Limassol Municipality and to the banks. So someone can read the wineries participating in our program.
It's very much a celebration for Limassol, isn't it? What does it mean to Limassol? I know you get thousands of visitors coming specifically for the festival.
This is the second big event for Limassol. I mean, we have the carnival and we have the wine festival. It's something very, very special for us because it's a way to promote our wine. It's a way for tourists to taste the Cyprus traditional dishes. Something that I'm asking you to participate every year and you don't. The wine press. I mean...
Yeah, treading the grapes. People love to do that, don't they?
Yes, they love. It's the old traditional way we used to do the wine, and believe me, foreigners are having a very good time participating in this wine press.
So we have to remind people that there's a lot of things, both for kids and adults, to do if they visit. What are the opening hours, and how long does it go on for, Skevi?
So the wine festival is from the 28th until the 7th. The opening hours are from 7 o'clock until 11, and 11:30 Friday and Saturday.
And have you still got the buses running from the other tourist centres? Because that's been a tremendous success, bringing people from across the island.
Yes. The CTO provides free transportation by air-conditioned buses. Okay, it's Friday 29th, Saturday 30th, and Sunday 31st. Friday 5th, Saturday 6th, and Sunday 7th. From Nicosia, from Larnaca, from Ayanapa, and from Paphos.
So I presume the details are available then as well at the CTO, but do tell us the website where people can get all the detail.
If you go to the website of Limassol Municipality, www.limassolmunicipal, you will find the program on the first page of our site, and there you will find the telephone numbers for the buses for all towns as well, that you can book your seat.
And I think the buses are free, aren't they?
Yes, of course.
Perfect. Okay, and the ticket prices, correct me if I'm wrong, €6 for adults, that includes a bottle of wine, and €5 for teenagers, just $4 for children under 12.
Yes, and since you mentioned children, we have child performances at the Municipal Puppet Show Theatre during the 2 weekends, Saturday and Sunday.
That is Skevi Antoniadou from the Limassol Municipality talking about the annual Limassol Wine Festival. The 53rd it is this year, opening August the 28th, running until September the 7th, open from 7 p.m. till 11 p.m. or 11:30 on Fridays and Saturdays. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.